I received lots of good leads from you guys on my first and second Australian videos, so this is going to be a third update on Australian fake history. I'm going to show you a relocated church, a graveyard full early after the settlement, the largest Victorian cemetery in the world, hieroglyphs in Australia, burial ground under Central Station in Sydney, an old newspaper with floodproof, and also more mud flood buildings coming up. This was the first part of Australian series, and many of you commented on this particular image saying that the graveyard was already full. Did you notice the church in 1545 position has a graveyard full of graves already? And there were many other people who commented in a similar fashion. So this is the picture on Flickr. This is the original source from the Royal Australian Historical Society. So have a look at that, and they say this was built in 1817. Now, if we go back to Australian history on australia.com, that should be an official one. It says something about Captain James Cook in 1770, and the new outpost was put to use as a penal colony, and on 26th of January 1788, the first fleet of 11 ships carrying 1,500 people, half of them convicts, arrived in Sydney Harbour. So basically, Australia started as a penal colony in 1788. So let's keep that date in mind, 1788. Now, going back to this picture, this is actually Windsor. So let's have a look at Windsor. I just Wikipedia'd it, Windsor, New South Wales, and apparently this was established in 1791, which is 26 years. And if you look at the picture again and zoom in, we can clearly see that next to this church, this is a graveyard full of graves already. Just look at that. So 26 years after the settlement, and you have this church built up by the convicts, and already you have a graveyard full of graves after 26 years. You be the judge if this is fishy or not. And this is the same church as of 2009, and you can see clearly the graveyard here. The next thing I want to show you is this video, which is the second part of the fake history of Australia series. And if you remember, I mentioned this Lidcombe station for the dead, which was basically a church built for funerals, and this train was bringing the dead to this church built just for that. And someone commented that station at 2530 was moved from that location all the way to a suburb called Ainslie in Canberra, Australia's capital, and is used a church, All Saint Church, Ainslie, Canberra. It's about a 3.5-hour drive by car. Not sure how they moved it brick by brick. Very peculiar. Here is the link. So here is the link opened up, All Saints Church, Canberra, and it says the All Saints Church is an Anglican church located in the suburb of Ainslie, Canberra. It is part of the Diocese of Canberra and Goulburn in the Anglican Church of Australia. The original building started as the first mortuary station in Rockwood Cemetery, Sydney, as noted on the plaque on the church. The stonework of this church was originally used to build the first mortuary station on the branch railway to the necropolis Rockwood near Sydney. This plaque was presented by the Australian Railway Historical Society to commemorate the old station, which was in use from 1868 to 1948. The railway line went underneath the main arch in the building where the aisle is in the present church. The side aisles are where the platforms for the station were located. Coffins would be taken out on the railway line to the cemetery for burial. So they are telling us that this church was relocated in 1957. A church relocated, right? Are you kidding me? This is the original image I received from one of the viewers, And as you can see on this board, this is on Lidcombe's railway station. 1855, the first line opens. Lidcombe station opens 1858. 1867, Rockwood Cemetery spur. And if you go to the next picture, it shows 1881, the station is rebuilt. 1896, a footbridge. 1924, quadruplification. 1929, electrification. 1945, wartime additions. And 1964, double-decker. Interestingly, I don't see anywhere the year 1957 and how this was relocated to another location. If you haven't done it already, get your merch and spread the message about the fake history of Australia. Someone also sent me this video, and before that I haven't noticed the extent of this cemetery. And they say it in this video that it is actually 760 acres, and this is the largest Victorian cemetery in the world, and more than 1 million souls have been buried here. I mean, this is just crazy. And this video is by the official Rockwood Cemetery YouTube channel. Also, I'm going to link everything in the description below under sources and credits, which is going to link to my Minds article, and there everything will be listed. I also got this message from Tanil about hieroglyphs in Australia. This is the video by Stephen Strong, and you can see here some hieroglyphs in Australia. And I think some of this is pretty amazing. I'm not sure if this is genuine or not. It looks genuine, but some people commented under the video that this has been debunked as false. I'm not sure. So have a look and let me know what you think about this. To me it looks legit, but you know, I'm not sure because it's actually quite low, so anyone could carve it. But I want to show you a couple of positions. This was one of it, where you can see a couple of hieroglyphs here. This hieroglyph looks like a UFO. Here's another UFO. Some more hieroglyphs, as you can see. Here's another good shot. They also found this stone carving that definitely looks man-made, and I don't think this is a natural formation. And lastly, I wanted to show you this carving in the stone on the ground. And this looks like a man having a standing hair and also a standing penis. Join the live Q&A if you have questions about ancient carvings with standing penises or anything else. I also wanted to show you this pyramid, and as you can see, there is a fence. So this is behind a fence, and this is by this YouTube channel. I also found this on Wikipedia, and apparently it is called Bellandine Pyramid. And we can see that the width is 30 meters and the height is 50 meters. And the builder is Ken Stubberfield. The Bellandine Pyramid is a man-made stone pyramid near the small village of Bellandine, Queensland, Australia. The pyramid is approximately 50 meters in height and built from blocks of the local granite. The pyramid was built after a local resident, Peter Waters, Water Swine Management Service, asked the landowner Stuart Morland what was to be done with the surplus amount of granite rocks that were excavated for land tillage, humorously suggesting that the pyramid could be constructed. 4 hours later, Morland decided to build the pyramid and contracted the work to Ken Stubberfield at a cost of $1,000. The pyramid base was to be 30 meters wide. Landscaping of the base was completely early, and the rocks were collected by a dump truck and brought to the site. The first 3 levels of rocks were laid first by a large excavator and then maneuvered appropriately into place by a smaller excavator. As the pyramid rose, a makeshift dirt ramp was built to negotiate the height, and the construction vehicles used this access ramp to complete the pyramid. At the end of construction, the ramp was removed by an excavator. The pyramid, which weighed approximately 7,500 tons, took 8 months to build. So let me get this straight. 7,500 tons of granite took 8 months to build, and the guy got $1,000 for this? And it is 50 meters high and 30 meters wide. I mean, give me a break. Was this guy a philanthropist or what? I mean, it looks like to me an ancient pyramid built there, and they wanted to have a cover story. Someone also mentioned to me that there is a burial ground under the Sydney town hall. And fair enough, I found it on the city of Sydney, Old City Burial Ground, and it says here Sydney Town Hall sits on the site of what was once the principal cemetery of NSW. Dating back to the 1790s, the site is commonly called the Old Sydney Burial Ground, the Cathedral Close Cemetery, and retrospectively the Town Hall Cemetery. And it says here, by 1820 the cemetery was full, so a new burial ground was set aside on Brickfield Hill, now the site of Central Railway Station. Some vaults and graves were opened, and the corpses and sepulchre deposited in the new burial ground. Here is a picture from caseyandlow.com.au. It looks like this is the company that was helping in the excavation of these burial grounds under the town hall. Here are some more nice pictures from past lives of the near future. This first picture is from 1900, State Records NSW, and it looks like these gentlemen are surveying the burial ground. You can see the graves in their back, and I'm not sure, but it looks like they are Freemasons, potentially. The next picture is the graveyard, and this particular grave caught my attention because you can see here the all-seeing eye, and underneath it the Ground Lodge Freemasonic sign, and this Freemasonic sign again. And this is Thomas Pryor, 24th, 1836, age 88 years, and arrived in the First Fleet 1788. So it seems like the First Fleet had some Freemasons arriving to Australia. I'm not surprised. And this is 1901 Royal Australian Historical Society. And this one again is a look at the burial ground, 1901 Royal Australian Historical Society. 1901 again Royal Australian Historical Society, the burial ground from a different perspective. This one is 1901 Barrier Minor. Some workmen employed in the dismantling of the Devonshire Street Cemetery made what appears to be a horrible discovery. In opening a vault last week, they found a skeleton in the corner, in a kneeling position, with the right arm held across the eyes. The remains of the coffin denoted that it had been turned on its side. The indications point to the supposed corpse having been buried in a trance. On regaining consciousness, its struggles burst the lid of the coffin open, and then finding all hope of rescue vanquished, it knelt and prayed. Many of the graves in the cemetery contain the remains of several bodies. These are shoveled into a sieve, shaken, and the bones emptied into a box preparatory to removal to botany. So it looks like this guy was buried alive. And the next one, 1901 RAHS. Again, it looks like the burial ground, and this was a division of the Congregational Cemetery. 1901 Royal Australian Historical Society. Again, another look at the burial ground. 1903 ARHS Rail Resource Center. Looks like they were building the central station here. And the next picture is from 1924 State Records NSW. Seems like the finished architecture here. And the last picture I want to show you is the current Devonshire Street from 2013. And as you can see, basically you can walk where the dead people were. The burial ground, you can walk through it now. It's a little bit creepy, but also because this lady caught my attention, I think she is the woman in the red dress from The Matrix. One of my viewers, Charlie Jeans, recorded a video about the Flinders Street station in Melbourne, and there are some good close-up footage about the station. You can see the architecture here and a close-up of the mud flood windows right there. So have a look at this video in full if you would like to visit virtually. Another viewer from Australia sent me this footage. Everything is a Lie is their username on YouTube, and the title is Muddy Matters in Oz, and they have some really nice footage about Tartarian buildings like this one. Look at that architecture. She mentioned that this next picture is the treasury or the post office, and you can see here the mud flood windows right where the cars are. A little bit further in the walk you can see some more mud flood windows right there, and here you can see a window almost totally underground, and this is just crazy. It's a clear proof for a mud flood building architecture. Here is another nice Tartarian building with all the intricate details, and you can see these are the mud flood windows right there. And this building is dated 1897, as you can see above the entrance. I also received this email from Tom, and he says, crucial mud flood evidence. I have found an Australian newspaper report from March 1890. It describes the nationwide flooding and devastation as well as reports of earthquakes. Wow. Here is the article from the Mercury, and it was published in 1890, March 19. And here is the part that talks about the flood. I downloaded it so we can see it larger. Reports from Sydney show the floods are everywhere subsiding. From Brisbane, there is news that great distress exists. Over 1,000 houses are flooded in Brisbane and suburbs alone, and several thousand persons rendered homeless, a great many losing everything they possessed and being reduced to complete destitution and even starvation. Many of the destitute are housed in various buildings, and large quantities of clothing, bedding and food are being distributed. I'm back from my weekly homestead work. I had to pack some hay, and in the meantime it became a little bit dark, so that's why I had to turn on the light. So let's continue here. Huge landslips have occurred at Mandan in the West Moreton district, and it was thought at first that an earthquake had taken place. Mandan is a small township about 6 miles from Marburg and divided from the latter by a range of hills. The shock and the noise seemed to travel from the main range under Mount Telagala, and the houses were shaken and inhabitants terrified out of their wits with the noise. I'm not sure what is this here. Rush of water took place and the large slipped bodily into the creek, by which it was surrounded with a sound like an earthquake. Where the hill stood is now a sheet of water. 5 or 6 farms are not recognizable, the high land being now low and vice versa. So basically the inhabitants heard some kind of noise and there was an earthquake and then the flood came. That sounds like HARP, doesn't it? In either case it sounds like a big cataclysm event in Australia that created this big flood with the noise, and that later on created the mud flood. I also received a lead from Anthony Ruslan saying I should look at William Street, Collins Street, Little Collins Street and Burke Street in Melbourne, Australia. So I looked at it, and here it is, random place in William Street, and here is my first Tartarian building. Look at that architecture, all those intricate details, and obviously at the base level you can see the mud flood windows. Definitely not designed that way. Next up is Collins Street. Look at those mud flood windows and look at that architecture. Definitely Tartarian, not built by convicts. Next one, Little Collins Street. Look at these old nice buildings still standing strong, and if you go and look at this small street here, you can see the mud flood window right there. The end of Burke Street we can see the Parliament House, and look at that architecture. What a building, what intricate details we can see here, and the usual so-called colonial style pillars. Another viewer sent me some links to look at, and these are the links here, some really nice old pictures. Have a look at that. This building is apparently Hotel de Ville, and look at the mud flood windows. You can see that this base level is built from other material than the one on top. And here's another one. This is Bourse, I'm not sure what is that. And the post office, again this is in Melbourne. Look at that architecture here. I don't see mud flood windows here, but the architecture is definitely there. Here's another one, and this is the Bibliothèque, which is the library. Again, it looks like a museum here. And look at that one as well. And this was dated, here it is, publication date 1870, 1871. And if you look at Melbourne, that was established 1835. So 1835, 1870, that's basically 25 years. They built this, they built that, they built this, and all of that was built by convicts. That's it for me, guys. I have to go because it's getting dark here. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Have a wonderful mudflood day, and I'm off. See you in the next one. Bye.